Hi, welcome to Fishery 2015. You join us here today at Chilham Mill Fisheries near Canterbury in Kent. It's an absolutely dark, grey, dreary, miserable day. Looks like it's absolutely going to lash it down. But we're in high spirits as we're about to show you around an absolutely fantastic fishery. This happens to be the third carp fishery that we're showing you this series before we head up north to show you some general coarse angling fisheries with our expert Andy May. As always, whether you're a carp angler or a coarse angler, get your catch reports uploaded to Fishery.co.uk. Check us out for all the latest hints and tips, articles, detailed weather's angler forecasts. And without any further ado, I think it's probably time to hand you over to our carp expert, Mr. Adam Penning.
Set deep in darkest Kent countryside, the lake we're at today is a real jewel, not only in Kentish carp fishing, but it's one of the best waters in the country. And it's a lake that I first became acquainted with probably about 15 years ago, around about 2000. And I've been coming here as regularly as I can ever since. Maybe a couple of trips a year, but I try to get down when I can. And the place we're at, you'll all have heard of probably, it's Chilham Mill. And the reputation it has as a big fish water, but also a place where you can actually get bites from numbers of fish at the right time, is quite a fearsome one. It's a place where in the past the BCAC eliminators have been held, which is an indicator as to how prolific the venue can be in terms of bites. And it's also very, very well established as a big carp water. In Chilham you've got well over 50 30s, I think there may even be 80 30s now. It goes up all the time, and they are, I wouldn't say friendly fish, but they're catchable, you know. So definitely, without a shadow of a doubt, the two main things that I've found with Chilham over the years are it's the most productive and lucrative water I've ever fished for 30-pound carp. So if you're looking for that elusive 30-pounder, there's few better places to try and get one than Chilham. In fact, there's so many that you can sometimes get 2 or 3 in a night. And the other side of the coin is its fantastic, unbeatable pretty much reputation as a winter water. And I don't think I've found a better winter water for big carp anywhere in the UK. Whether that's because it's shallow, I don't know, but it certainly produces the goods. Even when it's bitterly cold and there's ice over half of it, you've always got a chance for a big fish down at Chilham. So today we're going to have a little wander around, show you some of the key swims, talk about some of the tactics, a little bit more about the history of the lake and what's gone on. It changes every time I come down, always for the better, because the ownership have got a real dedicated programme of management going on at the lake. And you would think, looking at the lake, they've got an army of 100 blokes, 100 squaddies or navvies, but there's just a handful of them, and they have such a passion for the lake that they just transform it year by year into impossibly more beautiful surroundings. Vince Leader is the guy who owns it, and Vince took over the place I think around about 2010. He bidded for it at auction and got the whole estate, and my, what brilliant hands it's in. It's Vince has put in oxygenation areas to make sure the fish are in tip-top condition, and with careful cultivation and management the lake has been cleared of a lot of its foliage and dead trees, but at the same time it's still got this amazing old overgrown feel, which you'll get to see as we walk around and look at some of the swims together. Today it's August, believe it or not, and it's lovely and warm, but it's very, very stormy. We have got a train line just next to us, so apologies for that. It's not rush hour, but there's a few going past. But yeah, I mean, today it's perfect carp fishing weather. We've got some big, big thunderstorms coming up the English Channel from France, and we may even see a few fish turning over as we're walking around. I'm hoping we will, because as we're walking around, I'm going to decide where to fish, because I'm lucky enough to stay on and do the night tonight, which I'm absolutely relishing. In fact, I was so excited that laying in bed at home last night, I could barely sleep till about 4 AM because I was so excited about coming up here, because Chilham just does that. It's an absolute jewel, one of the greatest carp lakes in the history of carp fishing in my opinion. So I can't wait to show you around. Right now we're in an area called Right Hand Snag, which is pretty much middle of the lake. We're going to take a walk up and look at a swim just up here called One Pole. Well, this is one of the prime bits of real estate at Chilham. This is a swim called One Pole, which is peg 26, and a very, very productive area at the right time, particularly in the winter. In fact, with Chilham being one of the best winter lakes, I would say this is certainly one of the better winter pegs. It controls the middle or a quarter of the middle zone of water. You've got the top arm, which we'll look at, and the bottom arm, but in this central bowl, there's 2 or 3 key swims, and One Pole is one of those. The water out in front of here is some of the deepest that you'll find anywhere in Chilham. At the right time of year, when there's a bit of water on, you can find down to 8 feet in places, maybe even a touch more. And running across directly opposite to the Swanee Bar, where it comes up about halfway across the lake, maybe a bit more onto a very shallow bar, and then over across to peg 10, which is the Swanee Bar swim itself. There's some deep water to the right of that as well. So you've got the central area, the deep water, you've got an island just to the right there, everything to go for really, and it is an area that's known to hold fish a lot of the time, even in the summer. Particularly at the moment, there's some thick weed beds out here, so if it was really hot and there was no weed, there's a carp just boiled in front of us there, then the fish might have flushed, but the weed is holding them here at the moment, and you've got a perfect view. We just saw a 30-pound fish jump over here. Talking of 30-pounders, I thought I'd just check my facts while we were walking up to this swim, and there are actually 100 different documented 30-pound carp in here, 7 of which are over 40 pounds, with the biggest, I believe, is called Chili's fish, which is up to almost 50 pounds at 49 something. So there's another one jumped out of the water over there. They're really alive at the moment. The storm's dissipated and passed over, and it's good fishing weather anywhere, but this is Chilham time now. This is perfect weather. If I think back over all the best sessions, summer or winter, that I've had at Chilham, here comes another belt of rain coming across. The best sessions I've had here have always been wet, uncomfortable ones, pretty much like today. So I've got high hopes for this evening. I've seen quite a few fish here, so I'm going to get my gear in here later. And the swim itself, what better bit of wood-chipped comfort could you ask? You know, it's lovely and sheltered. You get the big belting southwesterlies and westerlies coming in from there, so you're nicely blockaded in. It's a very comfortable swim, and one of my all-time favourites. That's One Pole. I always feel quite at home when I walk into this swim. This is down the mill end, peg 30, which always in the olden days, before Vince took it over with the syndicate, was known as Reynolds Point. That's how I always have it in my mind, as Reynolds Point. And it's an area which it's not full on down the shallows. It's about midway between the islands and the midsection and the extreme bottom end of the mill. But it's an area where the fish just seem to gather and feed. It's a stop-off point almost, I imagine it, and because another swim, one of the best ones on the lake, is almost opposite, and that's peg 5. It's difficult to determine what there is that makes the fish use this area so much. There are 6 natural springs in the lake, which is one of the reasons the fish are in such incredible condition and growing so quickly. Maybe a couple of those are in this area. I don't know what it is, but the carp are drawn like iron filings to a magnet in this zone. As they're travelling down to the mill end, this is where they'll stop and feed, and if they're coming out, this is where they'll stop and feed. So a very, very good area that's done a huge amount of fish over the years. There's some fish cruising about out there now. We just saw about 20 of them going past, which, despite this incredibly carpy weather for fishing on the bottom, you would think the fish that we just saw were cruising along on the surface. So it just goes to show that carp will always break the rules. And we're about to get another flash of lightning and thunder roll in a minute, I think. I can't wait to get the rods out later. But summer or winter, Reynolds Point is a great area. I remember back in probably early 2000s, Andy Maker had a brace of 30s from when the lake was half frozen over, and he caught these 2 fish out here, put them in the Angling Times. And it's it's just one of those zones that should never be overlooked. It's a biggish area of water. You've got here a good couple of acres, you know, between Peg 6, the corner of Bailiff's Island, and 5 over there. There's a few ups and downs, a few gravel patches, a couple of small bars close in, and it is one of my favourite parts of the lake. And there's a carp just boiled 6 foot out from the edge. There's always fish here in Reynolds Point, and that's one of the reasons why it's one of my favourite swims at Chilham. It feels like we're in the middle of a solar eclipse down at Chilham at the moment. This area we're in now, down at the extreme mill end of the lake, is Peg 34, and normally a magnificent sun trap. But yeah, we're in between thunderstorms again. One of the most magnificent vistas on any lake. It just looks like a painting, doesn't it? With big beds of lily pads and a snag infested far margin. Well, it's not really snaggy, loads of little bushes and an island that's tucked away in the back there. One of Vince's oxygenator plants running there, which is doing a lot of good for the fish. Just an absolutely magnificent swim. And one of the things I really like about Peg 34 is you have not got anybody else down here. The nearest peg is Peg 1, which is right over there. You couldn't even cast to it. So you've got probably a good acre of water just to yourself. And it's not a swim that I've really fished an awful lot. I've done a few charity events here with, there used to be some Pro-Am matches run years ago, which were good fundraisers. And I did a couple in here with my guy, and we caught fish from here. It tends to be an area that's really good when it's red hot sunny, but I don't doubt that there's fish up here, some resident fish throughout the year. And I have found them tucked away in the back corners and behind the island and along there in January underneath the snags and so on. So it's an area that should never be overlooked, and an area that when you bivvy up in, you're going to be very happy with what's in front of you, I'm sure. So that's Peg 34 down the mill end. In accordance with Chilham being one of the premier syndicates in the whole of the country, you'd expect the facilities and the security to be top notch as well, and indeed they are. Down along one bank at Chilham, you've got a public thoroughfare, bridleway or whatever they're called these days, and you get dog walkers coming along here, but no vehicle access or anything. It's just strictly for anglers. But just to give the guys that fish the syndicate a bit of security, all of the swims are gated and they're all padlocked as well. So once you're in there, you reverse in there, drop your gear off, put the car back in the pound, and you've got your own secure bit of fishing. It's more secure than a normal gated swim might be as well, because you've got this 5 or 6 foot high fence here, which is actually erected around the entire perimeter. It's 26 acres of lake, and this otter fence runs around the entire thing. Now, I don't think I've seen an otter fence that big anywhere on my travels around the UK. And again, it's testament to the dedication that the guys have got at preserving the carp and this fantastic environment. Thinking ahead, you know, otters are going to get to every fishery in the UK eventually. They're not getting in here, I can tell you that now. So, fantastic job. Well, I've been in the process of getting myself sorted for my summer return to Chilham. I've not fished a summer night up here in probably a few years now, so really looking forward to it. I only got one night, but really up for this one. So I've settled into one pole. I've seen quite a few fish here, sort of milling around on the edge of the weed, but quite a few in open water. And I've had a bit of a lead around and found a tiny little gravel patch, which surprised me because most of the bottom seemed quite soft. But the spot that I found was exactly where several fish had rolled. So I lined it up on the tree line and I put some bait down there. Bait is quite interesting now at Chilham because Chilham's gone through a huge gastro curve, if you like. Years and years ago, even up to a few years ago, they were very picky fish. Not picky in terms of being fussy, but they preferred small hook baits, small feed, small background feed, and things like corn, pellet and hemp Plastic corn hook bait, can't use plastic now, which is a very sensible ruling of the syndicate. But small hook baits, you know, they could come and feed heavily, but they like to feed on smaller food items. In the winter, maggots were absolutely phenomenal, and pretty much was the only way to get a bite. And to my surprise, the lake has changed in the last few years. It's actually changed very much in another way, very much for the better, because the lake is now very switched on to boilies, and these big old carp love nothing better than bedding down onto a big feast of 18 millers. So it couldn't be more diametrically opposed to what it used to be. If you think, you know, it was size 10 hook and a grain of plastic, and now it's maybe a stiff hinge or you know, an 18 or 20 mil bottom bait and a biggish hook. So but the fish, I think that's one of the reasons why the fish weights are just transcending themselves every year. There are 740s in here now, and I think there's another 6 fish that are over 39 pound, and they will be pushing over soon. There's a fish, the biggest common is over 39 pound as well. So it's got an extremely bright future, and the fish are just getting bigger and bigger. So boilies is what they want, that's what I'm giving them. So having found my spot, clipped up, wrapped out my lines in the most methodical, precise fashion that everyone does these days, it's by far the best way. And then this guy, my ever faithful spom, I use that to put out my bait mix, which is predominantly boilie, but so I've got a load of sticky baits, krill, soaking in krill liquid, properly hums, my God, it's horrible. And a fair old helping of hemp, a little bit of rock salt, and that's it. You know, really, really good carpy attractive mix. So I use that everywhere. I was using that on the quarry last time when I caught those fish. You know, it just works. The krill is just a devastating bait, especially at this time of year. So I put 20 spoms out there, so probably about 2 kilos of boilies and hemp mixture. And then I've got my rods rigged up ready to go, which I've wrapped out to exactly the same distance. I mentioned earlier about the plastic corn rule at Chilham. Very, very sensible rules at Chilham. There's quite a few rules, but do you know what? If I had a syndicate, I think I'd just copy and paste the rules from Chilham, because they're the best ones I've seen in quite a while. Barbless hooks. With barbless hooks, you know, it's contentious, but in my opinion, it's the only way to go. If you've got a barbless rule, you eliminate 90% of all towing and tethering. You think about that for a moment, you know, it's great for the welfare of the fish. So I've got a barbless hook on here, nice big size 4 with a pop-up krill, nice brown colour to match the brown freebies that I'm putting out there. I avoid bright ones, especially at this time of year. They've been absolutely done to death. Lead on a clip, anti-tangle sleeve, and a bit of tubing. So very simple, my usual multi-rig, and I'm going to put 2 of those out side by side where I put that bait. And with the weather looking the way it is, and having seen a few fish in the area, I'm quite confident of getting a bite. So if I do get one, I'll get a bit of video footage, and you'll see it tagged on the end of this. But if you don't see it, then I blanked. Well, this superb looking swim is known as Transformer. There's a massive metal electricity box on the pole at the back of the swim, which is how the swim gets its name. And probably fair to say that in years gone by, this swim was the most productive on the lake. It's still very, very good. Does big numbers of fish every year. You've got a big island out in front of you there, and a peninsula of land that comes out to meet it. And in between, you've got a perfect little corridor. And the fish migrate up and down the lake, and it's a proper little bottleneck and a really good ambush point. I've had a lot of good fish from this swim. Quite a few fishing tight underneath that willow in very cold weather in sort of February, March time. And that area of water just through the bottleneck is a long range swim next door from a swim called Scaffolds. And the fish do hold up right at the back of that alcove in the island there. They did it in the days before bait boats were allowed on Chilham, because it was a safe area, no one could cast there. But even though boats are allowed on here now, the fish do still stack up there. Out to the right, you've got a huge area of open water, which no one can really bother you. You know, it's again, it's a lovely, the way the swims are done, it's just perfect, because you've always got your own bit of water that no one can really touch you with. And you've got various bars and spits and plateaus and so on that are out here. The ground gets shallower as it goes across towards peg 12 on the opposite bank. And as we look down to our right towards Bailiff's Island, which is pegs 8 and 9, that goes right across the middle zone of the lake, which is probably the best area to be in when the weather gets really, really cold. Right now though, there's a fair few fish in this middle zone. I'm seeing a couple rolling over while I've been talking to you, so a good transitory area, you know. Fish are coming through these islands all the time, and I think it's because they get bottlenecked here in big numbers that this swim used to do, and probably still does, enormous numbers of bites. But Transformer, that's definitely one of the best pegs here. There's an area on the riverbank side of Chilham which is called Bailiff's Island. It's quite literally an island. You've got a nice little walkway, little channel of water behind there, and it splits into 2 swims, so nice and social for the 2 bailiffs in the old days, but now for the syndicate. It's not just reserved for bailiffs anymore. So you've got pegs 8 and 9, which we're in 9, I think. Yeah, so this is 9, this is right hand side of bailiffs. And the 2 pegs are quite disparate in terms of this side controls the central area, or part of the central area. We've got a lovely island there and this beautiful bottleneck just between these pads and the island, where the fish are constantly traversing through in front of us. If you fish the other side, that fish is the mill end, and the other side of this bottleneck. Both very, very good areas at different times. I've seen fish come out of that side in really good cold weather conditions, but probably this side is better when it's really cold. I've had quite a few good fish here when it's been really wintry. Quite a few 30s from this swim. You've got the end of the Swanee Bar out in front of you and slightly to the right. You've got obviously those island overhangs. There's some nice gravelly spots underneath those overhangs which didn't used to be there. I found them recently because those trees now come over, they've collapsed and sort of settled into the water a lot more, and it's quite undercut there. There's some very good spots around there. A lot of weed, as you can see, nice healthy weed growth. Not too much, you know, there's big areas of clear water as well, so there's a good balance. Yeah, right hand side of Bailiffs. It's a swim that I've done a few nights in, and another favourite of mine. Well, it's a proper dreary old end to our day working down at Chilham. Really hope you guys have enjoyed the shot footage. It's if you're a syndicate member, then I'm sure it'll be something to treasure. If you've never seen the place before, then it's a proper treat. Maybe you'll be a syndicate member in the future, get your name down on the waiting list. There are very few better fisheries than Chilham. In fact, it's in my all-time top 3 venues that I've ever been to, and I've been lucky enough to have fished a lot of venues around the country. It's very, very special indeed. I mean, another thing that makes the place so special is the fish themselves. I mean, not only are they big and willing to come and take you on if you fish well, but the great thing is that when you get a bite, you never know what it's going to be, because Chilham is made up of a huge cadadgery of different strain fish. You might get a leather, then you could get a fully scaled, then you might get a long dark one, then you might get a short fat one. And Chilham really is like a box of chocolates, and therein lies a big part of the appeal to me. So if you like variety of fish and stunning looking fish and big fish, it ticks all the boxes. And in scenery like this, it really is, you know, I can see why they call Kent the Garden of England. So we've had a great time. It's time to sign everything off, and I'm going to see if I can catch myself a carp, and hope you've enjoyed an insight into one of the UK's leading premier venues. So that was one there. Did you get that, Macca?